let me just say, I have one of the best jobs on the planet because I get to meet some of the most brilliant individuals and I get to learn from them. And I get to serve those conversations up for you, my beautiful Ripplers, to listen to watch, and to learn from. Brilliant entrepreneurs, game changers, people that are doing unbelievably incredible work out there. And I feel like I'm stealing because it's like I get a masterclass with these people, which I'm recording and stealing a little bit so I can bring it to you and say, check this out. But I am very, very grateful because I get to meet some of the most brilliant minds ever. And today's interview is no exception to that. Let me tell you, the ripples come home, my friends. They do. You create positive ripples out there in the world. More positive ripples come your way. I interviewed Jennifer Hutchinson just a few episodes back. Jennifer and I really hit it off. I love her vibe. I like what she's doing. And just out of the blue one day, she ripples a connection to Angela Pappas. And she said, trust me, Steve, you guys are going to get along. I just know it. So Angela and I exchanged a few emails. We talked about the possibility of having like a pre-call. And I'm like, let's just go for it. Let's just do it. And when you watch this interview, you're going to think we've been friends forever because she and I are so simpatico on so many levels. She is brilliant. She has come from the tech world, so she's been involved in a lot of things that are very unique, which she outlines a little bit in the interview. But her real skill set is coaching, talent, and leadership development. And she's amazing at it. She has such a calming sense, and I can see why people look at her as the resource that she is because she is tremendous. And I'm so grateful she agreed to be a part of the Ripple Effect podcast, sight unseen, so to speak. She did see Jennifer's interview, so she knew I wasn't a complete moron. But even despite that, she decided to come on the show and put her trust in me to see where we took the conversation. And what I think we ended up with, pure gold. Magic. Magic, my friends. You are going to want to know Angela Pappas. And by the time you're done with this interview, you are probably going to ripple this on to some people that need to know about her, know about the topic, and are probably open to learning why some of the things Angela and I talk about are critical, no matter how small or how big your organization is. So I'm ready to dive in to this interview with Angela Pappas. Enjoy. Angela, thank you so much for joining the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm a little nervous because you are, as Jennifer has suggested, a rock star at what you do. And I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your career path and sort of, especially your take on leadership, because you've worked with talent in leadership development in the roles that you've been in. But I really want to give my audience just a sense of kind of who you are. So maybe just give us a high level of how the awesome Angela we're seeing today became the awesome Angela that you are. So how did that unfold? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Wow. I love that. I will. My background is actually in technology. I went to college in Ohio and I got a degree in professional writing, which isn't tech in itself, but I did an internship at IBM and that set my path to be in the tech space. And so I was a technical writer, technical editor, technical writer, and moved quickly into leading teams and moved out of tech writing very quickly and started to lead teams of process improvement engineers and software developers, and did a lot of fun work in the tech space, working in a data center. And when I mean data center, I mean like bat cave, hollow floor, low ceilings, dark, cold, like all the things. That was what our building was like. So it was fun to come out of it was called the E building, and we'd come out of the E building into the rest of the building where everyone worked, and it was like we were out of out of jail or something. It was funny.
And you could warm up, right? Because it was in those days, like, those were like super cold environments.
Exactly, and you could warm up. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah, everyone had extra jackets and sweaters on the back of their chairs back then. So uh, it was a great experience. And it actually, I did a little pit stop in talent development. So I moved from the tech side of the world over to the
Okay.
P&L side and did program management for enabling employees to be the best they can be. And that was a really fun experience, but then landed back in tech, specifically in information security, which
Okay.
we now more commonly is referred to as cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So was tapped on the shoulder to come and do a job that I literally had no idea what I was doing, and that I had relationships with people and I knew how to build relationships. And so I walked into that role really clueless, if I'm honest, but I knew that I was going to be working with customers, and that was fun. Again, sort of being outside of that data center, really focusing externally, not just on the internal customer, which is what I was used to, and stepped into that. And then very swiftly thought, this is a lot of fun, but we need some more things around information security. We need to do more communication. We need to do more training. And so I and my leader and a small team, we set up the first information security training and awareness program for Thomson Reuters. And that was a great
Just a
experience.
small company. Just a tiny
Just a
company,
tiny,
right?
it was 60,000 people at the
Let's
time.
test this out. These guys are so small. They'll be a good place to experiment
Pilot.
with this.
Yeah, we'll just, yeah, exactly. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
So, I mean, I got to ask though, the question it was, so in that environment, that's a lot of, that's a big project to tackle, I would imagine. What was that like walking into that when you were like, well, hey, I didn't know much about this, but now we're doing it. How did that evolve, and any lessons learned throughout that process for yourself as you were gaining your confidence?
Yes. One was to surround myself with people who had similar experiences already.
Yep.
So I got super involved with an organization that was a cyber organization, cybersecurity, but they also had this training and awareness arm to them. And so I got really involved with that organization. And with that, then was contributing and helping to plan some annual conferences. And so then really having myself surrounded with those people, as well as really leaning into curiosity and figuring out inside the company, what are the biggest pain points? What are the things that we're trying to actually solve with this program? And that meant working with the super engineers, great group of guys and gals, and really picking their brains to understand what are employees actually doing that's putting us at risk, because that's what we need to tackle.
Yep.
So I'd say having those conversations, leaning into that curiosity, recognizing that I didn't know, and I think just being honest about that, and then surrounding myself with people who are doing this work already and learning from them. And then I was able to feel more confident and build those skills of what we're doing here is the right thing to be doing.
So I sort of described you as an entrepreneur because it did seem, based on the research I did, that you kind of would dive feet first into new opportunities, and
Yes.
you're like figuring it out on the
Yep.
fly, which I think makes a really, really good contributor. Because as I think about like InfoSec, for example, like the security piece for an organization, maybe not coming in with preconceived notions or prior experience, but coming in and asking the questions that maybe some people that are so close to that topic would not think to ask or even acknowledge, I think
Yes.
really lends some really strong value. And especially if you're leading the team, the thing I hear from you is like, I didn't have to know everything. I brought in the people that did know those things, but collectively as a team, we could collaborate and work together. And you were probably pointing some things out they hadn't thought about because they were so close to the topic.
Yes, and likewise, they were teaching me things and I was pointing things out because I didn't have to your point, I didn't have those assumed or those lived experiences. And so
Yeah.
I was just kind of going off the cuff of, well, what about this? And why wouldn't we do this? And how about that? So those questions were powerful in that sense.
We were introduced by Jennifer Hutchinson, a mutual friend that we have that was also on my podcast. And now I'm starting to see the connection. She didn't give a lot of detail when she made the introduction, but I can see how you and I are very similar. So one of the things I had shared with her, I think, was I actually own a software company in addition to what I do with Ripple. And I, at my age, I'm old, never expected to actually be involved in a software company at all, right? But I always tell people when they're like, I get on a sales call or I talk to somebody that's recently come on board and I'm like, hey, I'm the CEO, but I'm really the CDG. I call myself the chief dumb guy. I like am not the smartest person. I am smart enough to bring the right people to the table to make it happen. But I think my superpower, my strength is I ask a lot of questions because, like you, I'm very curious. And every time I ask the question and get a data point or I learn something, get an answer, that just builds my stack, right? And I think that actually, from a leadership perspective, makes you even more valuable because you're not automatically coming in and saying, here's how it needs to be and this is what we're doing. And you're open to new ideas and you're a little more fluid or organic in terms of decision making and the approach that you take, especially. And I think that reveals itself in the people that you brought into the team or that you're leading because you're giving them the space and the flexibility to operate at the level of which you pay, you brought them on and pay them to do it. So I see so many leaders that then, tamp down on that and they lose so much potential. People leave, hate their jobs, don't feel like they're contributing. So I think the way that you approach it, I can see it now. I can see why there's a connection here for sure.
I love that. And I do think, I think for me, part of being successful as a leader is being vulnerable
Yeah.
and sharing that you don't have all the answers. And actually, as a leader, it's not our job to have all the answers. What I believe is our job is to help our people either cultivate the answers within themselves and or point them to the resources who can be of help to them. So I might not know, but I know 6 people who do. And so let's connect you with those and you can learn what you need to learn from them.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time as it relates to the ripple and the process that I sort of encourage people to do, even in their professional or personal networks. It's create that diversity because if you don't have the answer, chances are, if you've cultivated good connections or you built really strong relationships, you're probably only one or two people away from getting the answer. And I find a lot of times I was actually speaking at a conference a few weeks ago in Las Vegas, and I said, the most powerful question as a leader you can ask is, how can I help you, right?
Mhm.
And somebody said, well, yeah, but what if they ask questions that you can't answer? And I said, well, then you're making my point right there, which is why you need to have a solid network. It's why you build a network. As a leader, you're nothing more than just the conduit between individuals, connections, resources, information. And you don't have to have the knowledge all in here. You have to know the knowledge to know who the two or three people are that we need to tap to get their perspective, their idea, and maybe their ultimate solution or input. And so
Yes.
I love that perspective. Did you always come by that naturally with as you were coming up through your career ranks? Was that something you always sort of had, or did you have to learn that as you came into different environments?
I think it was wired in me. I'm a people centered leader. I start with the
I
people.
love
So I
it.
think that there was some light wiring, but I do think that as I've led more teams in different organizations, I have been able to hone some of those skills even at greater levels. And I absolutely love the Ken Blanchard leadership model, which is basically at the end of the day, it's about giving your people what they need when they need it in a way that's meaningful to them. And
Yep.
I think that that is how I operate. And I think it is also key to being an inclusive leader and being a successful leader with a diverse team of people that are coming from all different walks of life. If you give them what they need when they need it in a way that's meaningful to them, then you are being you're ultimately helping them to be the best that they can be, and you're not just throwing blanket answers at them. You're not just answering the questions for them, giving because you're helping them to tap within, and then also pointing them to the right people who can be of assistance when they need it.
I mean, I think you just probably came up with the perfect definition for servant leadership right there. I mean, that's
Mhm.
ideal. For those that are watching this video or listening to this on the podcast platforms, who may be like, "Who's Ken Blanchard?" Ken is like this management guru which for leaders like me that kind of need to look at books from a pop up perspective, right? He does these short, very thoughtful story driven kind of books, but they're really designed to be airplane reads. His most famous one is the 1 Minute Manager,
Yeah.
and I love his philosophy and his approach. And I got to be honest, you are literally the first guest that has ever brought his name up, and I'm a super fan of his. So,
Oh, yay, we can
yeah,
fan
I'm gonna have to.
it.
You automatically get a bonus. You didn't know you were getting a bonus today, but you get the gold star, and I'm sending you
Yay.
something just to say, hey, we are compadres when it comes to Kim Blanchard for
I
sure.
even got to meet him, which was a total blast.
Oh, wait, how long ago was that?
Right before COVID, so January 21. Gosh, was COVID in 2021? Listen to me. It's all a blur. I was out in California to be certified as a facilitator, and
No kidding.
he comes in and he's at the office, so he comes into each class each week and introduces himself and sits down and has conversation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He is a salt of the earth kind of individual without question. I actually spoke at a conference back in, gosh, 2015, 2016 timeframe, and actually it was at the same event that I I believe it was the same event that Stephen Covey was at, and it was a quite the difference experience, right? Covey was like this entourage guy, like there's two or three people around him. You could like, no pictures, that kind of thing. Nice guy. I did get a chance to talk to him because I went on stage right before he did. But then Kim Blanchard was just showed up, kind of like you thought he was just a regular conference goer and the most humble. I'm not that Stephen Covey wasn't, but Ken just came across as the most humble guy and wasn't there, didn't want any special treatment, didn't want to go to the green room the speakers normally go to because he wanted to be out with the people talking. What are you hearing? What are you learning? What are you experiencing? What new leadership strategies are you guys uncovering out there that I might need to write about? I just thought it was just such a cool way to approach it. So
Yes.
I bet that was a thrill for you to meet him as well.
It was an absolute thrill. And if I can tell you a quick story,
Yeah,
I I was out there for the week. I had a teammate of mine that was also getting certified. So we rented an Airbnb because it was cheaper than a hotel.
sure.
And that house that we rented had previously been owned by the person that Ken had been in business with and had written some other books with. They had since parted ways. But and this gentleman's passed, and I'm blanking on his name. If I looked at the books behind me, I could get his name. But so we were in his house. So the owner said to us, he's like, you said you're doing the Ken Blanchard certification. He's like, so I have to tell you who used to own this. Paul Hersey. Paul Hershey. That's
Oh yes, I know that name. Yeah.
we were in his house. So it was just like
Oh wow.
just all of it coming. It was just so interesting how it was seemed synchronistic.
Yeah, that's a full circle moment right there. That's
Totally.
pretty cool.
100%.
Well, so you obviously have a direction that you like in terms of the technical security space. That seems to tick a box for you. How different is that in what you do with that work in comparison to what you do with talent and development, like,
Yeah.
leadership development?
So I think it's different in the sense that I'm fully smack in the role of helping people develop. Whereas when I was in the tech space, it was part of my job as a leader.
Yeah.
I went to Tesla in 2018. And so that is when I made the shift from the HR domain, excuse me, the tech domain to the HR domain.
Okay.
And the reason I was able to do that, a couple different things. One, I was tapped on the shoulder by some leaders at Thomson Reuters. So in addition to the security awareness and training program, I was tapped on the shoulder to be immersed completely as a facilitator in a global culture and leadership development initiative that we kicked off. And so that really, being seen by those leaders and being recognized for what I could bring to that program, that really set my path to pivot and to be moving into that HR domain. And so then it was at that point I was like, I really want to do this full time. I don't want this to be a side gig, right,
Yeah.
on top of my day job.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so then Tesla came and said, hey, we'd love for you to come lead our technical trainers that train the service technicians. So it was a great fit because it was still in that tech space, but it was leveraging my leadership skills and leveraging my transferable skills that we all have. All of us have
Yep.
transferable skills, right? And so that was
Well,
the
all you cool people, I don't think I have any transferable skills whatsoever.
I highly doubt that. I could name three already, and I've only been talking to you for 28 minutes. So that was what led me to move into that space full time, and
Oh, that's
I've got
awesome.
it. It was an amazing experience. And was there some Was there a little bit of drinking from the fire hose? Absolutely. For sure there was.
Well,
But
good. I was thinking you were going to stop it. Like, was there a little bit of drinking? Yes. Every,
maybe that too.
but yeah, it was. That is that's a huge like 180 shift, right? In a lot of respects. And now, like, you almost feel like the response, of course, security and you know, avoiding any potential pitfalls or compromises from a security perspective. I don't want to undersell the value and the importance of that, but now
Absolutely.
you are kind of literally holding, people's careers in the palm of your hand. And whether they're successful or not really has a direct correlation to your job performance and, your overall the way your bosses would look at what you were doing for them. So there is I think people that make this shift don't think it's that big a deal, and then you realize, oh my gosh, the level
Yeah.
of responsibility that comes with this is significant.
Right. When it's not just your fun job on top
Yeah,
of your day job, it's
yeah,
a completely shift. It's a complete shift in your lens and in your perspective. So it was a good shift. That was a great shift. Unfortunately, it didn't last long because Elon laid off 15% of the workforce to build the Model 3s.
uh,
And so my role was eliminated, but I was able to land at a cybersecurity company called Palo Alto Networks, and that
yep,
was a really really cool experience to come into that environment, come into a company that was growing. Remember, TR was 60,000 people, right? And so
yep,
I've gone to Tesla, which it was tiny compared to that. Now I'm at Palo, which is tiny compared to that. And so I'm getting all these experiences that I haven't had before because of being at TR most of my career. It's like there was no red tape, there's no bureaucracy, like you can get stuff done faster. And it was just so exhilarating and so it was like whiplash because we were constantly your head's on a swivel of all the things that need to happen and when they need to happen by, but you feel supported, you're all in it together. I came in to stand up a global graduate program. I also did some manager development, I did professional development. I mean, we were all in the weeds on everything because there weren't a ton of us at the beginning.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was really a brilliant experience.
Well, I got to ask you, coming from that space, especially in a growing concern like a company that is in, either receiving another round of funding or has hit a growth plan, a growth path that seems like that what you would do for them would be very needed. But what shocks me, and tell me if this is right, it could be completely my perception, but having done a lot of corporate training and spent time in that space actually as a provider, not necessarily working in an organization to do it, but it seems like the organizations, it's one of the first areas that they cut, which doesn't seem like it's the smartest area to cut. When you're decreasing your workforce, you want to make sure that you've got training resources and leadership support and employee development, all of that, locked down so that the people that are being asked to do more don't get pissed off and leave or, just stop putting, caring behind the work that they do. It seems like that role would become even more critical. But I've seen it at Apple, I've seen it at Dell, I've seen it in a lot of tech spaces that unfortunately is one of the first places that they look to cut when they're either going through hypergrowth and they're trying to reduce some of the spend, or they've had a slowdown in the business unit. And the people that you would count on to bring your people through that are the ones that are the ones in the crosshairs. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it does seem like an oxymoron.
Yep.
It's opposite to what we would do. And what I would offer is that the CEO Nikesh and the CPO were absolutely in alignment around the development of people and the critical role that it played in helping the organization excel and meeting the goals that have been set out. And if we didn't have people skilled to do that, then we were at a loss. And so there was a huge focus on people first, because nothing else happens if you don't have the people that you need. And
That's
they
right.
understood that. The whole leadership team understood that. And so I think that that's why there was so much focus and energy and resources for us to do the work that we needed to do to really develop people across the organization.
Based on your experience, could you boil down like 3 to 5 things that you typically looked at when you were working with someone one on one to help them achieve, the next level with their career path or to advance as a leader, just things that you might naturally gravitate towards that are things that either everybody misses or things that maybe people haven't put enough time or energy towards.
I think we often get sucked into what's their technical skill. That's where we get our focus.
Yeah.
And I think we lose sight that just because someone has amazing technical skill doesn't make them an amazing people leader. They're not mutually exclusive. And so what I always like to start with is the idea of this self-awareness. So do we understand how we operate? Do we understand how we show up, how we communicate, how we build relationship? Do we build relationship?
Yep.
How do we operate? What makes us tick? And I think that's really critical with any person, but especially when we're looking at the leader level, they have to have that understanding. And so I think a high EQ is the first and foremost thing, from my perspective, that is going to help people be successful in whatever role that they're in. So I think the ability to communicate clearly and the ability to give feedback that is both constructive but kind. I
Yep.
think I think of Kim Scott and Radical Candor, and I absolutely love what the work that she's done there. We actually brought Kim Scott in to Palo Alto Networks as a
Oh
speaker, and
yeah.
so to meet with her, it was a really amazing experience. Um, so I think that the ability to give and receive feedback, to clearly communicate, and these are kind of those transferable skills, right?
Sure.
But I think that if we have that baseline of things, then the rest of the components just kind of fall into place. But I think that those are the essential, the foundation, the bedrock to every person being successful. And I think I
Yep.
might have gone a little bit off on tangent, but everyone being successful in their career, and that's where I like to start as a coach and as a
Yeah.
people leader.
I love that. Do you think that if you had someone in the audience that's like, well, I don't have someone like Angela at my company, or I don't, I'm not lucky enough to be of the size to be able to bring somebody like that in. What do you recommend for folks that are out there either trying to, they're either part of a small team or they're doing doing a side hustle, growing a business or an
Mhm.
operation, or they're starting to scale their own business and starting to think like, hey, this really makes sense, but I can only do so much because I'm the leader and everything falls on me. So how do you encourage those folks to either A, go self-educate, and B, how do you know when it's time to bring someone like you in as a, full-time contributing member of the team?
I think that I can myself as an example. I was sort of in between. I'd kind of outgrown the role I was in, the level I was in, but I wasn't quite ready for the next. And my manager saw that. And she knew that I was capable of doing more, but I just needed some refining, if you will, and a little
Yeah.
bit of, at the end of the day, it was about building my confidence. And so that she had resources for me to be coached by someone. And that really was a huge opportunity for me to move into that next level because I increased my self awareness. I understood where I had an opportunity to grow and develop. Um, and what I started was my own self worth and my own confidence. And when I built that, the other things fell into place. Now, that might not be everyone's story, but it certainly was mine. So the skill was there, but sort of this imposter syndrome, because I moved out of that tech domain into the HR domain,
Yep.
was sitting on my shoulder and sort of saying, this isn't really what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And so that coaching and that really diving into where's that story coming from enabled me to move through it, acknowledge it, move through it, and move to that next level of job that I wanted and that I deserved.
I love that. Well, and you brought up the term coaching. Is that how you sort of gear what you do? Like, from an organization perspective, is that you are that, that coach and that resource that folks can come to, and maybe maybe I'm struggling. I know I want to continue to be here at the company, but I'm struggling to find my purpose or where I really fit, which I think a lot of times, especially in today's corporate world, and I don't think it's exclusive just to tech. I think it's a lot of organizations are they don't give you the roadmap to success. And I think that people often are trying to figure it out on the fly. And sadly, more people are smarter than me, but I'm not very good at figuring that out on the fly, especially when it comes to the topic of me, right? And I'm,
Mhm.
I'm not, I need that outsider's perspective. I need a sounding board. I need someone that can coach me through the good times and the bad. What's your, I'm curious, how does that impact how you go about coaching the folks that you get the opportunity to work with?
So yes, to answer your question, I I was a people leader, so I was a coach to my team, but then I worked a ton with people in the business. And so then could be also a mentor and a coach for them. And they knew that. And yes, people would come to me and ask questions. And I don't know that I would say that there was this ongoing formal coaching relationship because unfortunately people felt like they didn't have time, which is
Yeah.
sad. And
Yeah.
that's I don't think an unusual thing. I think it's more common than I would like it to be. So being that coach, and when I coach people, I'm not giving them the answers. The answers are within.
Yeah.
And so all I like to do is ask powerful questions for them to get to those answers that are a fit for what they need and where they want to go. I can't decide that for them. They have to do that work, but I can be there to partner with them
I
on
love
sort of
that.
that exploratory process and that discovery phase, if you will. And I think after the discovery phase, then you can have that transformation phase, but not until you've kind of figured out some of those things that sit within. So, powerful questions. And I think that that is when people can lean into that and be open to be honest with themselves, it can really provide answers that they need in order to do whatever it is that they want to do. If they want to get promoted, and to your point around sort of a what does success look like, I would offer that the days are gone of this ladder approach, right? Our careers are not a ladder; they're a jungle gym,
Oh,
and we are
I
constantly
love that.
sweeping back and forth. And so the moves might be lateral, but you're picking up all these fabulous experiences and transferable skills along the way so that at some point maybe you do go up. But if all we're doing is climbing, we're missing the opportunity to build this broad level of experience that I think fuels us and serves us as we mature in our careers.
I love that. I will have to borrow that and give you proper credit for the jungle gym analogy. I love that. Because you are right. Everybody thinks about advancement as up, 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 but you have to climb over or on somebody in order to get there in most cases. And
Mhm.
I think that's where I think organizations that really get it, that understand it, that would bring folks like yourself in to be a part of that team, know that the opportunity to get the best out of their people is there, but you can't gamify it, and you can't create an uber competitive environment because then people won't be open or share collaborative. They won't innovate together.
That's right.
But you have to strike a balance. And I think that the sad thing for what I see in a lot of corporations is it's a dog eat dog world, right? And the leadership is like, well, it's survival of the fittest, and whoever's here at the end is whoever's here at the end. And it's like you invested all this time and money to bring every single person that comes into that plant or that company on a daily basis. And why would you not try to put the best possible things in their path to make them the best they can? And I'm not even just saying from a selfish reason like more productivity or more profitability or landing more customers, but creating a culture and an environment where people actually love the work they do because
Mhm.
they not only feel seen in what they do and how they perform, but there is encouragement to advance and grow and expand those skill sets and get better. And maybe you start here doing one thing kind of like you were and then move and shift, and then you're stretching your legs in something new, but you're leveraging the past experience to inform what you do next, and leveraging that. I don't think there's enough encouragement of that in most companies because they get so bogged down in terms of growth or retention or these high level priorities, which are all very, very valid and important. But if you don't have people that really are executing on the work, that love what they do, it's going to come across somewhere.
Yep. Yes. And I would offer to build on what you said, when we also have a culture where people can fail, that is where we can really innovate and we can help people feel safe. We want them to fail fast, fail quick, right? Learn
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
But just creating that environment to do that, especially when we're talking about the tech world, you can, I believe that you recognize extremely higher levels of innovation when it's safe to do that.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think if people don't feel that they can do that, then you're stagnant as a company, because how can you grow? How can you excel? And how do you engage and motivate people if they're not feeling safe, to build on what you said?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love that. Well, you brought up failure, so that makes me think of a ripple connection question. What's a failure you had in your career that you actually learned from, and maybe still informs what you do day to day now?
When I took on the responsibility to be the lead of manage a group of software engineers, I really was out of my comfort zone. I had not done that job. And
Yeah.
they asked me if I would, and I was like, sure, why not? I mean, this is me my whole career. Sure, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't say that out loud always, but often. But I'll do it. I'll figure it out. Like I'll figure it out. That's what we do, right?
Yeah,
If
they're
I
developers. There's not scary people at all.
That's what I
They
thought.
don't even talk. I mean,
Well, I would offer that I did not do enough homework when I went into that space, and quickly realized that I was not gaining their respect and their trust in ways that had come to me so naturally
yeah,
and easily before. And I was just like, what is it that I'm not doing right? Like, what's going wrong here? And I had a couple guys that were just hard on me, super hard on me. But what I learned was, I needed to be even more curious, which, so deeper levels of curiosity. I needed to not act like I knew what they were talking about always. Because they knew I didn't. So then just
yeah,
own it, right?
yeah,
Just own it and be like, excuse me, can you say that again? Because
yeah,
I didn't get any of that.
yeah,
So my willingness to be vulnerable in that space, and to not just nod my head and smile, but to say, hold time out. What you just said to me is like, the Peanuts teacher. Wah, 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 wah. Like, I have no idea what's going on. So let's start over. So when I was able to admit that and willing to be vulnerable in that space, and also lean into their expertise and at even deeper levels, uh, I built trust with them, and we had really strong relationship by the time I moved on. And now I remain friends with really good friends with a couple of those people. And that was a scenario from like almost 22 years ago. So it was a long time ago.
yeah.
And I'm proud to say that it was a massive failure. Also, I would offer that I was not set up for success, which was a good learning.
Sure.
If you're going to throw someone into the wolves, you know, you got to give them
Give
a
them a
little.
fighting chance. Yeah.
Exactly, give them a fighting chance. But because I was willing to do it and sure, and I didn't ask a lot of tough questions back, they were like, "Oh, she's got it. Let's just throw her in there."
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I did not have it, but I learned quickly. And so it was a failure, but I also learned from that. And so moving forward, when I led teams, I came at it a little bit differently. I started also with them as individuals at a greater level, which I maybe hadn't done with them right away. Did more of a team approach. And so there's lots of things I learned from that. And I think it's been it's constantly sort of runs in the back of my head, that experience, and how I don't want to go back to that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it kind of informs how you function today, right? Like, don't
A
go into a
million.
situation that you don't know what you're talking about and try to BS your way through it because it will inevitably come back to bite you. And I mean, it almost always does. I was talking to a group of college, seniors recently about first jobs and opportunities. And I told them, I'm really envious of you because you get to walk in and you get to announce that you don't know anything and that you get to be in a situation where I am a sponge. Teach me what you'll teach me. And it was really interesting because somebody said, well, they are hiring us. They expect us to walk in with a certain level of confidence. And I'm like, I'm a CEO of a company. I can tell you right now, if you walked in day one, I already know you don't know anything, right? I mean, you don't know anything about my business anyway. You might know about the industry, you might know about the vertical. But if you come in trying to sound smart or try to be a little bit too assertive with what your take on certain things are until you've got the lay of the land, all you'll do is alienate people, right? And it's generally why people struggle to keep the job coming out of college for that first year, because sometimes we come a little bit more, we've either been ill advised or we have a inflated perspective of what we bring to the table. And
Mhm.
sometimes just being quiet, sometimes paying attention, or just sometimes being willing to, raise your hand and ask that question. Like you said, I think that's brilliant advice to be able to say, look, I don't understand it. Could you explain it to me? Will carry more weight in terms of reputation and career growth than you could possibly imagine.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And it's funny, right? How new college grads, they think they know everything. And I'm generally speaking,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
everybody is up that way. But I would love to ask them in 10 years, like, how do you see
How'd that
yourself?
work out for you?
Right. How did it work out for you? And what would you give that person? What advice would you give them day one? Yeah, it would be interesting to hear what they offered.
Well, so for those that are going to see this on video or listen to this on the podcast, they heard you say, like this happened 22 years ago. To see you on the video, I would think that you started your career at like 5. So I just
The
don't buy
filters
your
are
whole
close to me.
resume thing going on here. But
Oh, that's
I mean, you definitely you're the kind of leader that I think companies need. You're the kind of person that gets it and understands it and realizes that, like, certain approaches, there's not a one size fits all. I tell people this all the time when I talk. It's like, your common sense may be different than my common sense. And none of us, unfortunately, ever had anybody take us by the hand when we get into our first couple of jobs and say, come on, kid, let me show you how to get along with the other kids in the sandbox. You figure it out by osmosis. And sadly, the osmosis effect is by people that are doing it really, really bad. They're not contributing. They're not, taking someone under their wing to guide and mentor and direct them. Or, they often look, threatened at the new hire, or I'm going to keep that person in their place. And it's, as I was explaining it to somebody recently, it's like a lot of corporate environments is like it's the grown up version of high school, like who's in, who's out. And organizations that don't have someone like you that can see across those lanes and be able to say, look, I need these people collaborating, I need these people talking and learning from one another. And I actually need to eliminate the whole authority and position thing. It's like everybody here has the ability to teach and has the ability to learn. And if you bring people in with that mindset and recognize that, this is the type of culture we're trying to create, you just get so much more value out of that,
Mhm,
right? But,
mhm.
my common complaint with, especially kids that are coming out of college, I shouldn't say kids, but young adults that are in their first or second big job, is nobody taught them how to do what you and I are doing, right? We're on a Zoom. We've never met in person. We got introduced by somebody, but people are too reserved. They don't know how to have a conversation or dig into really meaty conversation topics like right away, but come at it from the perspective of, well, what's in it for me, or that I'm always the only person that has the right answer. It's like being open and collaborative. And I wish companies would wake up and figure that out, because I think you would find productivity increase significantly faster. You would find job satisfaction and employee satisfaction go way, way up. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to create more opportunities. There'll be more innovation and creativity because people are not afraid to speak their mind or solicit collaboration. And they don't care whether they're the only one that gets the credit for the idea. They're like, hey, me and Angela put this thing together, and Angela really brought some great ideas to this. And we think, senior leader, this is something that we should be looking at, maybe new direction, new strategy, whatever. But they just don't encourage that enough without someone like you in that position saying, look, leaders, we got to do this. And it's not a once a year when we do our kumbaya summer picnic. It's a every day, every week kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm. To add to that, I was at a spring forum for the Strategic Communications Master's Program at the University of Minnesota last week, and this brilliant speaker presented some findings. They do research every year with CEOs and with individual contributors, and what do they need, what do they want? And he pointed out the fact that we're no longer in this age of authoritarian leadership. We've moved on from that, generally speaking. Obviously, there are some organizations who still operate that way.
Yeah.
But now what people want is humanity. They want adaptability. They want empathy. They want highly communicative. And with this generation, this new generation that's coming up, and they don't want to wait for everything to be solved and then told what they're going to do. They want to be a part of the problem solving. They want to be at the table contributing their ideas. And if we can't change how leadership thinks about those people coming in and what they have to offer, we're missing out on really tapping into what's going to motivate them and engage them.
Yeah.
And we need to start moving away from that. But so many people in leadership were sort of brought up in that way and in that space. And so it's what's natural and normal if we don't make a decision to rewire and choose a different lens through which we view leadership and our own leadership skills. So I was just reminded of, it's a big task for us when we've got these new grads coming in to really help them set their foot in the right direction to be successful, because I feel like they're pretty clear on how they want to operate.
Yeah.
And certainly there is some molding and some shaping there that needs to occur. But I also think we need to understand, how do we get the very best out of them? And how do we customize our approach with them so that we can really understand how they're going to excel and make a true impact for the organization. And if
Yeah.
we're not
Well,
having those conversations, we're not figuring out, that's a miss, that's a loss on us.
yeah. And by the time you end up having that conversation, it's probably too late anyway, right? Because you've either
Yes.
lost momentum or you've lost the heart and mind of the individual. And by that time, it's an uphill battle to even try to reverse that trajectory, sadly. The counterpoint to that, or the flip side to that that you raise, I think, is also thinking about people like my age that would go back into the workforce or go into a company, and now having a understanding of the dynamics, because now you're looking at a younger leadership team, you're looking at a different generational shift there in terms of the powers to be. It's also equally important to stay abreast of what's going on there and understanding how you can come in, and not because you think you have age, experience, or wisdom because of your career path, but I see that a lot of times where people are coming back into the work environment and they're failing to gel, and it's because they're not really open to being led by a younger generation, and so they get closed
Mhm.
off. They're constantly, I'm thinking of one particular client. She's just really struggled to maintain any forward momentum on her career because she ends up irritating the leadership team. Because, like, I know you guys have done it this way, but I come from this experience, I have this knowledge. And at the end of the day, she was like a high level executive, but now she's several layers down from that and still trying to operate at that high level, which is created conflict and challenges. So I guess the reason I bring that up is I think it's equally important for people to think about it as they go into these younger, different generational management hierarchies, to understand the way that those things work as well, and figure out what you're going to need to do to either tamp down your enthusiasm to share or say things maybe out of turn, or tell people that they're wrong or they're doing it incorrectly, and maybe figure out how to go with the flow a little bit more because the dynamics in the workplace have shifted so dramatically.
Yes. Well, I think it goes back to my earlier point, EQ,
Yep.
and on both parties, as well as the ability to communicate clearly, honestly, but with kindness. And I
So
think that's critical.
I love that. I love that. For our audience that may not be familiar with EQ, could you just explain that really quickly from your perspective?
Yeah, from my perspective, basically emotional intelligence is understanding, how do I show up for others? What makes me tick personally? And then how does that show up when I'm in collaboration with others, when I'm leading a team? How do I listen? How do I communicate? And how do I sort of shift or morph the way that I show up in order to meet people where they're at so that together we can be successful? So long answer, but that's, for me, that's what it means.
But a brilliant answer. If everybody just listened to that, go back, pause, go back 30 seconds, listen to those questions that Angela just put out there. These become phenomenal question points for you to have that inner dialogue with yourself. And if you're truly honest about what the answers are and where you need to adjust, slow down, speed up, adapt to the environment you're in, there's so much that can be gained there. And what I like about that is you sort of gave everybody the blueprint to sort of do the self evaluation themselves, but you still need a coach or someone with expertise like yourself to really say, okay, you know, this is your tendency when there's like a lot of stress or projects are delayed or there's frustration amongst the team. You know, your tendency is to, either, try to rule with an iron fist or just get out of my way. I'm going to fix it.
Hmm.
Having a clear understanding of how your natural reactions are to certain situations like that before they occur give you the guideposts for which to maybe not make those mistakes, especially with a new team.
Yes. And I think those are skills that we build. And this is what I love about EQ, and this is what I love about talent development. You're building skills professionally, but you're also building skills personally. And
Yeah,
so it's impacting who I am as a whole and wherever I show up. And to me, what a gift that we can offer employees, but also for employees who take advantage to really show up for people in a different way that's more meaningful, more rich, and builds stronger levels of connection and relationship. And for me, that is what makes the world tick,
I
is that
love it.
connection, true connection.
Ah, well, I Jennifer knew what she was doing by connecting us because we were going to be fast friends. You're stuck with me, so sorry. But
I love that. I'm
yeah,
here.
you and I could talk about this stuff for hours. I am so in love with this topic and this approach, and quite honestly, quite passionate about it because I think companies, number one, the role that you're playing should be the last one that they ever think about laying off, like when things, take a downturn. But most importantly, as you're beginning to scale an operation, it's one of the first hires that you need to make because you are the guiding light for which the success of the organization really depends on. And so, very lucky, I think, the organizations that you've worked with and, will work with in the future, I think are very lucky to have someone like you.
Thank you.
I I always like to shift gears a little bit, just kind of keep it light. But what we always do is we always like to ask a couple of ripple connection questions. And so
Yeah,
you
I
know
saw
what those
that.
are. Yeah, the questions are just fun to ask. They're fun to
Yeah.
answer, hopefully, and they give a little bit more insight as to who you are. We've been talking about a lot of the work-oriented stuff, but I want to get a gauge of who Angela is like outside of that part of her personality. So are you game for a few questions?
Sure. Let's do it.
Awesome. What did the 7 year old version of Angela want to be when she grew up?
Uh, an Olympian ice skater.
No kidding. Well, Minnesota, that makes sense.
Dorothy Hamill, I just thought she rocked the world.
Oh yes, that was
Yeah.
one of my first crushes.
I had her haircut even. Yeah.
Oh no kidding. Do you still ice skate?
This is the thing, I've never ice skated in
Oh
my
yeah.
life. So where that came from, I have no idea.
Oh that might be one of the best answers ever. Like I want to be a professional ice skater. I'm not taking any lessons to do it,
I've
but
never, I fall every time.
I
And I
have
wish
the
I lived
haircut.
in Minnesota. I can't, I still don't do it.
I know many people from Minnesota. I thought you guys came out of the womb with ice skates. I mean, just
Right?
all, yeah, yeah.
In a
Or a
hockey stick.
snowplow, one of the two.
Yep.
So you grew up in Minnesota. What's kept you in Minnesota all these years?
My family.
Yeah.
I went to school in Ohio. I got my undergraduate in Ohio.
Which
Uh,
which university in Ohio?
I went to a very small private school called Cedarville University.
Okay.
So about 2,700 students at the time.
That sounds like
And
heaven.
it was a great experience. I would never change that college experience, but I wanted to come back to Minnesota because family.
Yeah, that's great. Who do you give credit for helping you become who you are today?
Hmm. I don't know that I could pinpoint one person, right? I think I've had a lot of really great role models and influencers
Yeah.
that have, and I think who I'm becoming today hopefully is different than who I am tomorrow, because my belief is that this life is a journey and there isn't a destination, and I feel like each and every day is a day to grow and learn and do something, um, be something different, be someone different. And so when I think about sort of the foundation of it, where it started, I would say my mom had a lot of influence on me. You did not mess with that woman. She was born and raised in the South and came from a huge family and sort of a militant approach to life, but that she showed up with so much love. and always encouraged me and always had me convinced that I could do whatever I wanted to do and whatever I put my mind to.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Is she still with us?
She is. She has Alzheimer's, so
Uh,
she is uh, here physically, but
yeah.
not mentally. But
My
she'll
mom
live
suffered
to
with it for 10 years, so I feel the
Mhm.
pain for you. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it's the worst. It's the worst disease, but
It's terrible.
I did hear a really positive take on the disease when we were dealing with it with my mom is that we're the ones that suffer, but every day is a new day to them, and even if they've lost that connection to who you are, they're meeting a new friend for the first time.
They make new
And
friends every day.
yeah, yeah. So if there has to be a positive out of the challenge of that disease, that kind of does reset that, right?
Yes,
So I know that's tough, but
it is.
well, maybe you can show her this interview and say, hey, you gave her some real, positive kudos for how she made an impact on your life for sure. I think that's awesome. When you think about your career path now and you've done a number of things, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what do you
Yeah.
think you'd like to do?
If the world was my oyster, I would volunteer at a NICU hospital and with babies.
Yep.
And the other part, I would be working with animals and helping organizations do good things for dogs and cats and helping them find homes and be healthy and feel safe and secure.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Those are great answers for sure. Um, when you think about your superpower,
Mm,
what is that superpower hidden genius that you have that, and I'm going to throw a twist here that you don't often get to use in the corporate environments that you've been involved
Jeepers.
in?
The twist, I would say that I was going to say listening because that is what I hear a lot is that I'm an amazing listener. And during COVID, which by the way started in 2020, I was thinking about that after I said
Yeah.
2020. I was told that I was the glue that kept the team together and that I was the person that everyone came to if they wanted to feel better and feel grounded and feel less nervous and uptight. So I think I bring sort of this, I don't know, this grounding energy, and people can just sort of take a deep breath and relax and feel like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I could see that. Obviously this is the first time we've gotten on a Zoom, but you have this aura and energy about you that is super calming and like super supportive. I could see why you're perfect for the roles that you've done, but at the end of the day, I can also see why people will work their asses off to make you happy because you set the bar high, but at the end of the day, you're also like, hey, I'm going to kick you in the butt to go do what you need to do, but I'm there to support you along the way. And I can see that from you. You get certain vibes from different people. And I mean, from the moment you started speaking, I could tell that you have that. That's a gift. That's a true gift. And people are lucky to be around it for sure.
Mm. I Gifts are so fun to talk about too because they're not something that we sit around and pontificate, right?
Yep.
And so when we can kind of land on what it is, it's affirming and kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were given your experience knowing the corporate landscape as it is today, small size companies, large size companies, doesn't really matter. If you had someone that was before you and they were like, Angela, what's the best advice you could give me as I'm starting my career? What would you give them?
I would say that it's putting yourself out there and being willing to try new and different things, ask questions. Back to that being vulnerable, be willing to say when you don't know something, and raising your hand. I think that that's really important. And I think when you see something that needs to be done, and I know you said one thing, I think the way that we make an impact is raising our hand to do something, even if it's not part of our job. And when you can see that, you can name it and you can say, hey, I'm going to help with this. I think that that is a great way to operate when in any part of your career, but it's a great skill to build when you start your career.
Yeah, I love that you said that because one of the things that I often tell audiences I get the opportunity to train or speak for is that when you're the resource on the team, you're generally the last person to be put on a list. When people know that you are the person that will go out of their way to check on people or take on the project nobody else wants, or you stay late, you work, you come in early, you work just a little bit harder, a little bit smarter than most people, but you kind of know where all the bodies are buried. You've got your ear to the ground and you know what's happening, where it's happening. And kind of like we talked to, about when you have a diverse network, right? And you've got people out there, you may not always have the answers, but chances are you've built relationships with some that can help you arrive at those answers. You become so invaluable to an organization. And I find, like, especially younger people, they don't recognize how important that is right now, and really how vocal you need to be about being that resource. Like, I want
Mhm.
to learn more things. I may have a job responsibility, but I would love to learn about a different division in the business, or I would like to know, where we go as an organization from a strategic perspective, and what contributions could I potentially make. If you don't ask these questions or don't get engaged in these conversations, you'll never know, and you likely will never differentiate yourself quite as well as you could.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think things have changed since when I entered the work market, in that I was often just tapped on the shoulder. Hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? How about this? You'd be good at this. And so I think something else I would say is that you need to have some clarity around what inspires you and what drains you, even when you're
Yep.
just starting. Because I think that you can easily get sort of brought along by the shoulder into different roles that actually might not be a fit for what you want to do. The willingness to move is great, but also be clear on what is it that you really want to apply your skill and your experience to, and help that, and then ask for what you need in that space to do those things. So I think it's sort of a blended approach, but I think that it's not an easy market to navigate for people just coming into it. I think that it's a totally different world, and I wouldn't want to be coming in now, frankly. I mean, it seemingly has different and more challenging situations than when I started. Probably not, maybe, I don't know, but I just think that there's a lot of different things coming at the young grads that are moving into their first roles.
Yeah, and it's sadly, it's like drinking from a fire hose in a lot of environments, but you still have to make time to really, ask yourself those deeper questions. And if you don't have a resource, that the company's provided to you, like someone like Angela, the big thing is go find someone, find a
That's
career
right.
coach, find a mentor, find someone who can help guide you along the way. Because the reality is, even with our experience and our work history, we don't have all the answers. We don't know everything.
Yeah.
And, we're still trying to figure it out on the day to day as well. And so having someone there that's in your corner, I think, is such an invaluable tool and resource. And I, I know that the younger generation that's coming into the workforce today doesn't know about coaching or why there's value. I mean, even from my generation, there was a stigma to it, right? There was a stigma
Mhm.
to having a coach. Like, why would you need that? Like, you don't, we hired you because you're supposed to know all the answers, but the
Right.
reality is nobody ever does have the answers. And even if you have an answer, doesn't mean it's the right answer. So having
Right.
someone that you can rely on to give feedback, guidance, direction, help bring you, kind of pick you up when things aren't going so well, dust you off, put you back in the game, but also someone that'll be there to celebrate your successes as you advance. Because if you do it well, you'll advance pretty quickly, because companies need that level of talent, and certainly looking for that on the daily.
I agree. I agree. And it's great to have someone in your corner who, when a new opportunity comes up, they think of you.
Oh yeah,
So
I mean,
we
that's a
call that
very valid
sponsorship,
point.
right? But I think that there's different roles between coach and mentor, and even sponsor. And I think having sort of someone in your corner for each of those is really critical.
Yep, I love that. What is the best thing you could hear a colleague, or a client, or just a close personal connection say about you?
That I impacted them in a way that positively changed their life, that they walked away from a conversation or a situation feeling seen and heard and valued.
I love that. I love that a lot. Last three questions. If you had to tell someone how to best take maybe not so positive, maybe negative feedback or criticism, what's the best thing they can do with that gift that somebody gives them? They may not feel it as a gift in the moment, but what's your take on how do you take it? How do you? I mean, you said one of your skills is listening and interpreting. How do you take what you're listening and hearing and interpreting and then apply it to your benefit, even if it stings a little bit?
I think that one thing that comes up for me is to be reminded that it's about my behavior, not about who I am as a person.
Ah, that's great.
And maybe even do a little asking a few other people, do you see this happening as well? And so that you can get a little bit more of a broader group
Yeah.
sort of agreeing. And then the other thing I would say is you can take it or you can leave it. It's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do with it. But I think that if you can get honest and really say, is this something I do? Then, or this is how I showed up, or whatever the feedback is, you can make a decision what you do with it.
You just made me think of, and this will date me a little bit, but years and years ago, there was a professor, Randy Posh, I think. He wrote a book about his experience living with cancer, which was ultimately going to be terminal, right? So he knew it, had a young family, and wanted to leave his mark not only on his kids, but ultimately on the students that had gone through his class or were in the had been in his class, but he wanted to leave some lasting words of wisdom. And I remember one of the stories he was talking about. He might have been like, seventh or eighth grade, and he was on the football team. And one of the assistant coaches, he had had a particularly bad practice, and the coach was really hard on him. The head coach was just yelling at him, and his feelings were hurt. Like he was really upset, right? And he was walking off, and he's kind of crying. And the assistant coach walks over and he says, "Well, coach was on you pretty hard." He's like, "Yeah, I just couldn't do anything right." And he said, "You're lucky." And he said, "It's when they stop giving you feedback that you really have to worry."
Mm,
And he said he always learned that. And he learned it from that point forward that, I have to seek out feedback, even if it's not the best positive feedback, where I need to improve, what I need to do. But the moment people stop talking to you and stop sharing is the moment you really got to worry. And
mm.
I have thought about that lesson so many times over the course of my career or in conversations with people that I'm coaching through career transition or they're struggling to get to the next level. And I always ask people, like, well, how often are you asking for the feedback? What are are you waiting until the review, or are you asking for time with your superior, your boss, or whoever in between those moments? And, it's true for people that, that are assigned to lead you. That's important. But also your coaches and your confidants and your close friends, having those conversations and hearing the feedback can be such an invaluable commodity. And if used correctly, there's an ROI to it every single time.
Absolutely. And I think you're spot on with ask for feedback. Don't sit in angst waiting to hear it, right? Go after it, go for it. And
Yep.
if you really want to improve, that's one way to do it. And I think about in Neuro Leadership Institute, the science behind feedback is that when someone comes at us with feedback, our brains shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens. And so a way to avoid that is to proactively, consistently ask for feedback from a variety of sources so that you are not shutting down when you hear it.
Yeah, you're not immune to it, or your defense mechanisms where you close off your ears to even hear the words. Once you get practiced at it, then not only are you good at receiving it, but then you don't take it as personal, right? You know that it's coming from a place of genuine interest in who you are. And kind of going back to that assistant coach, if they stop talking to you, then, or stop giving you feedback or yelling at you, then you might want to worry. So,
I've not heard that. So that story in that way, it's really powerful.
yeah, it's one of my favorites, and it has informed me a lot of times because I don't like getting feedback. I don't like getting negative feedback,
No one does.
but there none of us do. But at the end of the day, it's the negative feedback that actually sticks with you, that actually makes you better, sharper, more capable the next time out. So I just think it's so important. Well, like I said, I could talk to you for forever. I am so
Oh,
grateful for this emerging friendship, and you're, like I said, you're stuck with me. But my last two questions
yeah, yeah.
is: when you hear the words "the ripple effect," what does that conjure up for you? What does it bring to mind?
Whew. Well, one thing is it brings up to mind for me is that we all have a responsibility for how we show up. And because we have no clue who we are impacting and who uh, we are trickling down to, either negatively or positively. And so I think it's a responsibility to be showing up for others in the very best way that we can. And because we know that there's going to be a downfall of whatever that might be. And so that to me is what comes up. That's not a very eloquently stated way, but
Sure
I
was. Yeah. No, it's very good.
we we don't know who we're going to impact either directly or indirectly. And to me, that's sort of that ripple effect. How I show up for my daughter impacts how she shows up for her friends at school,
Yeah.
and how she shows up for the teachers, and vice versa.
I love that. No, I think it was very eloquently put in a really, really good definition. So, my final question is what ripples could I be looking to create for you?
Oh, wow. I think keep doing the work that you're doing with this podcast. I've listened to a few of your episodes, and I think they're really just enlightening and full of fabulous information and nuggets to kind of grab onto. So I would say keep doing that beautiful work with that. That to me is creating massive ripple effects, and impacting me as I continue to listen to what you've put out there.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Well, I will continue to do my best. Have brilliant, amazing people like yourself on the show, so it makes it really easy. I always feel like I rob the bank because I get so much great information from these amazing subject matter experts like yourself that I can immediately put into practice, not only for myself but for the clients I serve. But I'm super, super appreciative of the fact Jennifer connected us, and she was right. She knew we would gel and we would connect in a big, big way. And so I'm so grateful that you spent the time and were able to come on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I wasn't sure what to expect, but this was a super fun conversation, and I agree. I feel like we've just sort of scratched the surface
Oh yeah,
because
we're having more conversations for sure. If someone wanted to learn more about your work or maybe reach out to you on something that they heard, what's the best way for them to do that? And if you don't want that, no problem. We'll, we can cut this out, but I just want to give you that opportunity.
LinkedIn, I think
Yep.
LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me. I'm low key on the socials right now, and so I think that that's where I'm showing up the most, and so that's the most easiest way I would offer.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll put a link to your LinkedIn and make sure that everybody knows to find that. Guys, we will be back again with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. But until then, Angela, thanks for being here, and as always, ripple on.
Thank you, Steve. This has been a blast.
Thank you.